Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and today we're going to talk about the Vanguard variants that were just released today, and whether they're worth your money or not. But before we get into that, I like to do a little bit of an overview of the sales, the details, and of course the ships. Now, the sale itself is effective now, and is going to run through September 7th. Now, we've got several different options available for purchase, and you can simply just buy the variant that you want. And it starts with the Warden, or the base model, coming in at $250 with 2 years of insurance, or the Sentinel at $265, or the Harbinger at $280, both of those coming with LTI. Now, if you already have the Warden, you can buy the ship upgrade to the Sentinel for $15 or the Harbinger for $30. Now, in this video, I'm not actually going to talk about the Warden because I've already done a Should You Buy video on the base Vanguard. So the link at the end of this video is actually going to be linking you to that first video that I did regarding the Warden if you have questions about that ship. Now, this is an interesting set of variants because it looks to be a hybrid of true variants like we've seen with the 300 series, but it also comes with the core pod in the middle, which is different for each ship along with different weapons. So, for example, the living quarters on the Warden base model is actually a fully functioning ejection module. And this thing can drop out and serve as kind of like a life raft with some thrusters to help control it. So outside of the different weaponry and equipment these ships come with, we can kind of mix and match later through the battlefield upgrade kits, or maybe we end up even seeing new different types of pods available later on as well. Now, we haven't necessarily got descriptions on that, but it is a possibility that it could be coming later. It's also interesting to see the different possibilities with each of these ships for down the road, but for now, let's go ahead and just talk about the upgrade kits that you have available, meaning that you've got the upgrade kit for $10 for the Warden, $25 for the Sentinel, and $45 for the Harbinger. And basically that means if you have one variant or another, you could swap it out for the other one if you have that upgrade kit in your hangar at some point. But enough of that, let's just go ahead and start talking about the ships, and we can kind of get into some of those specifics. Now, the Sentinel is the electronic warfare variant of the group, and what that means is that it comes with some neat features. And the one that I'm most excited for is the augmented reality cockpit. Now, I'm not sure exactly what that means, in terms of the functionality of it, but to me it seems like a very in-depth, almost Moby Glass-like experience, probably aiding in providing some killer hacking and disruption information where you're really involved in the process. But here's another thought. Maybe all the sensors that make for the Sentinel a great e-warfare ship are also going to make it a great command and control ship. Now, that's speculation, but the Sentinel could turn your cockpit into like a real-time strategy game with the fleet that you're flying with. Again, that's purely speculative, but the possibilities there are pretty endless. Now, the ship also comes with an e-warfare pod, decoy missiles, and also some awesome EMP charges. Workstations have also been mentioned by the designer and around the verse, and that the pod can be used for working on fixing components. This may make the ship, almost, more than just like an e-warfare platform, but it could be a small-scale workstation for overclocking components. It could happen. Now, we don't have details. It's very early, and it's all in concept right now. But the primary focus is going to be on scrambling signals and impacting enemy ships' electronic systems. Now, they're working on a design post for e-warfare to talk about the Sentinel and the Herald, so I'll make sure to do an analysis video on that once it gets out. But anyway we cut it, the Sentinel seems like it could be a lot of fun. The main purpose of the ship being distraction and being a pain in the ass for enemies. So not only is that a force multiplier in a way, but it's also the perfect ship for a space troll. Just being a pain in the ass, you on the internet, you know who you are, this could be your ship. Now, is it worth noting that it does have size 3 missiles, at least as of right now on the pylons, which is one bigger than the Warden, but that could potentially end up being used as the EMP charges. We'll kind of have to see how that all plays out, but I think we'll get a much better idea about the value of this ship once we get to the e-warfare design article, but until then, a lot of this really ends up being kind of speculative. Now, the other new variant that's out is the Harbinger, and that's kind of what I'm calling the Death Dealer. That may be a Youngblood trademark term, but the description of the Harbinger sells it as a bomber that's capable of going where other bombers cannot. And I take that to mean that it's able to land at outposts where something like a Retaliator would be too big, and it can go farther than something like a Gladiator. Now, how much value does that ability provide? Well, I think some, but it basically seems to be, the ship overall kind of seems to automatically trump the Gladiator. But at the price point that it's being sold for, it probably should. Now, compared to the Retaliator, it's kind of hard to say, and I think we can probably go through some more details and you can kind of make your own decision on that. Now, the interior showcases a module or a pod that has torpedoes behind glass on the starboard side of that pod. Now, you can carry 3 size 2 torpedoes, and they're dropped out of the bottom of the pod and then moved towards the enemy that has been targeted. Now, this is really kind of a nice design because the containment field means that the rest of the pod maintains atmosphere and is really still accessible during launching of torpedoes. Maybe you have somebody that's running towards the turret. Now, compare that to like the torpedo module on a Retaliator, where if you were standing in there when those bays end up opening, you lose your atmosphere and you could potentially be ejected from the ship. That's not a real ideal. So this is a nice use of space on the Harbinger. Now, the port side of the Harbinger pod actually is bunks for your crew to catch some Z's, as well as some showers and sinks and all that kind of stuff. Now, on the top turret, you're getting a rocket turret. Now, this is kind of an interesting development and something I'm sure that's going to be exciting for some people and something I'm sure others are not really going to care for. There's been people questioning the design of this turret as the ammo feeds from the ship in each of these pods. It has another set of rockets that can end up being loaded in. However, these ammo feeds have some people questioning the ability of the turret to actually rotate. Now, there are concerns of the length of the tubes as well, and whether it's going to impact how vertical these things can actually end up aiming, though I do feel pretty strongly that CIG is going to end up making them plenty functional. If the design right now doesn't work, they're going to change the design to make it work. That's just my belief, but it probably should happen. Now, for those of you that have used the Mustang Delta, you know the dumbfire rockets are a lot of fun to use, and they do some pretty good damage. Now, those of you that have also used the dumbfire rockets know that it's probably, most of the time, not super easy to hit a fast-moving, agile target. Now, some of that can be compensated by the fact that they're on a turret, which gives you the ability for some finer-tuned movements that aren't necessarily constricted by the way you're flying. Now, if you combine that with the fact that you're trying to fire them from a ship that you're not actually in control of, well, that may be a tricky task to take down fighters with a rocket turret. Which is why I think the real purpose of this ship is to engage medium to large targets, and in that role, I think it's a really scary ship. The rockets are going to be much easier to land on targets that are larger and slower, and add to that you get a railgun on the front, or at least it looks like you're getting a railgun on the front, is kind of interesting. The Warden has a big-ass Gatling gun, and that rapid-fire spam ability gives you more effectiveness against, smaller targets, but the big railgun could be more reliable in hitting a bigger object. So railgun plus rockets plus torpedoes, I think this thing is a nightmare, for things potentially freelance or cutlass size and everything bigger than that and above. Now, even if it does just have the standard, Gatling gun that the Warden has, that's still a scary combination as well. But the concept art seems to indicate some form of some form of a railgun. I find it pretty interesting, though, that all of the Vanguard seem to share the same power plant, shields, engines, all of those core statistics. I probably would have expected to see a bit more versatility through all of them, but that could still change in time. For example, I would expect something like the Warden, for example, if its main purpose is to be dogfighting and really engaging in a lot of combat, maybe it has bigger shields, whereas something like the Sentinel ends up having a low emission engine or some differences between them. That being said, with the modularity of the ships, then it kind of makes sense that they're all going to be based on the same frame with just minor adjustments to the actual equipment that it's running. But getting to what we need to cover here is the should you buy portion of this video. And I have to say, this is one of the hardest one of these videos to make. Not because I'm not sure what to tell you, but because of this hybrid module and variant sale, it makes it a really complicated question to answer. Also, I'm being honest here, I'm having a slightly hard time staying super objective here just because this is my favorite ship in the game. But I'm just going to rattle some of this off and you can take it for what it's worth. But to start, I'm going to make it really simple and say that I 100% think the Warden is worth the money. The looks are unique, the stats are impressive, and now with the modularity with the Battlefield upgrade kits, which should be available for purchase in-game, it really gives it extra flexibility without having to spend the extra money right now. As far as the Sentinel is concerned, it's an interesting ship. If you're passionate about supporting your organization, then yes, it's a really good option. If you're a lone wolf player, I'm not sure you're going to have enough to do in-game to really justify what you're getting for the ship and for the price. Now, sure, you can go make your own fun, but it really is a support ship at heart. I can see people playing solo who want to go out and disrupt organizations by shooting off a bunch of EMPs or maybe stealing information and then getting the hell out of Dodge. But, you know, yeah, well, here, let's look at it this way. A Sentinel and a Herald could be almost like the space version of hackers and identity thieves. But for the majority of solo players, my recommendation would be a no on the Sentinel. And when we look at the Harbinger, it's a kind of a mixed review, if I'm being honest, and just looking at the ship. Well, let's put it this way. I would have preferred to see a larger turret on top instead of actually rocket pods, but the rocket pods are at least interesting. The ship went from being something that I think could easily hold its own on its own to a ship that kind of requires escort. So again, we're talking about if you're in an organization that is active and large enough to constantly provide an escort. You know, can a Harbinger go out solo and win fights on its own? Yes. But is that going to be the normal scenario? Probably not. So again, solo players, I can really only recommend the Warden to you. But if you plan on playing with a group and you either don't have retaliators or you want this to be just a smaller bombing platform, I do feel that this hits a really nice sweet spot. Now, things do get a little bit complicated when we start talking about the upgrade kits. Now, I will say this, though, and even if we're talking about earning in-game instead of buying, having the modularity to swap out roles is really nice, and being able to buy a ship like the Warden and changing to an E-Warfare setup or to a strategic bomber that can bring a whole lot of pain at any given moment is a really nice perk. So if I have to give one recommendation out of the group, it's the Warden, hands down. Earn the packs in-game, and you're good to go. Or, if you just want to fast-track a little bit, go ahead and buy those extra packs, and you're set. But there you have it. You know, I hope that kind of helps you in your decision-making at least a little bit. This is one of the more interesting sales, but I think it's a really good one, and it's worth your consideration, especially if you already have a Warden. Now, if you have questions, drop them in the comments. Otherwise, I hope you guys have yourselves a wonderful day. Stay tuned for an update on the newly dropped social module, as well as the e-warfare discussion, and have a great weekend. Take care.